Thank you for joining us. For over 31 years, the Shalom Show generally focuses on the achievements of the State of Israel and Jewish life in general. And as the show's name indicates, we would like to see peaceful, mutually inspiring solutions for Israel, its neighbors, in fact, the entire world. However, world events and current politics necessitate conversations on issues such as how to attain peace and whether Israel should, in fact, give up more land for peace. Subjects such as the war on terrorism and so many others, including what should be a global concern for the environment. We do impartially present interviews with leaders from both the left and the right. And our special guests today are Joe Kaufman, and we also have the privilege of having Pamela, who is regarded either as a very brave person who dares to speak her mind, or is described as a misguided right-wing extremist. We'll hear her views and those of Joe Kaufman right after these messages. With us now is Pam Geller. Pam, it's a pleasure to have you on the Shalom Show.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Really a pleasure. So here we are on the Shalom Show, which obviously means peace. And you are criticized by so many people for openly having the courage to say the things you believe in a world that is so largely hypocritical, and other people admire you for it. So where are we with Pam Geller?
Well, I know where I am. The problem is that people don't like it. And clearly, I love that your show is named Peace. It's what I'm fighting for. But with many people, peace cannot be negotiated because this is not their objective. And so we must fight back. We are seeing an increasing hostile and evil force, both in Europe and clearly in the Middle East, and now America. And my basic platform is individual rights, which is the founding principle, of course, of America, and in the defense of individual rights. And so the battle now, yes, is against Islamic supremacism in this country, and not just the obvious jihad, the violent jihad, which we see on a daily basis across the world, jihadi attacks, but the stealth jihad, the academic jihad, the rewriting of academic texts at universities and in school books, public school books, the litigation jihad, suing people like myself to shut us up because, you know, truth is the new hate speech. And just telling the truth is a radical act. And continually, the cultural jihad, the social jihad, the economic jihad, you know, the moving towards Sharia finance, the imposition of Sharia law here in America, drips and drabs. And so it's deeply disturbing, and it must be addressed. And look, you know, you can avoid, you know, reality, but you cannot avoid the consequences of avoiding reality.
What are your views on the state of Israel today and the challenges it faces?
I think the tiny Jewish state is in serious danger. I think that the Islamic narrative has completely seized the international community. It seems to be under the spell of Islam. Every situation is framed in an Islamic supremacist light. The whole idea of Palestine, which of course is Israel, there is no Palestine. Jordan is Palestine, Transjordan is Palestine. And the idea that it's about land is a ridiculous notion. I mean, if you came here from another planet and you looked at it without any of the biases and any of the nonsense, it's this tiny state, 8 miles at its wide, where, you know, they want Judea and Samaria, surrounded by enormous Muslim lands. And we're supposed to believe that it's about land. It is a modern argument to an age-old hate. It is Jew hatred, period. It is not complicated. They try to make it complicated, I understand. But if you've read the Quran in the Hadith and Surahs, and you see that Islamic Jew hatred is in the DNA of Islam. When these terrorist attacks occur and they scream, you know, Khaybar, Khaybar, Ya Yahud, Seish Muhammad Sayyid, you know, they're chanting a 1400-year genocidal anthem.
الله أكبر لو أذن الله لنا يا أمة محمد سيقول حتى الحجر يا مسلم هذا يهودي خلفي تعال وقامسا ونحن نقطعها والله لا نقطعها أيها اليهود. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. الجهاد في سبيل الله الجهاد في سبيل الله الجهاد في سبيل الله محمد رسول الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر يا أمة الله أكبر يا أمة.
The Jews living under dimitude, under the most humiliating, when they were allowed to live, the most humiliating circumstances, denied basic human rights, and each country, each Muslim country would exact its revenge in various ways. But the point is, that's what it's about. And so you see the world is assuming this nonsense. But clearly, you know, before Israel was established, there were Palestinian Arabs, Palestinian Muslims, and Palestinian Jews. And at that time, pogroms were being conducted against the Jews. 21, 29, 36. In Iraq, as you know, there was once a thriving Jewish population. So the West thinks by making Israel the boogeyman that they're somehow negotiating some peace for themselves. But I can assure you, it's just, you know, the Jew is the canary in the coal mine historically. You know, who was it that said? I think it was in Islam. First the Saturday people and then the Sunday people. And we have so enriched the jihad. We have so, in the largest transfer of wealth in human history, we have emboldened our enemies and our executioners. And what's coming is a terrible war.
Well, I hope you're wrong. And speaking of land and dates, you mentioned 1967, and many people wonder, hey, before 1967, the Arabs had the West Banks, Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, and Sinai, and the Golan, and there was no peace. They didn't want peace then. So some people argue, why would they now want, as Obama was suggesting, that perhaps Israel should go back to the 1967 lines, why would they now accept those lines and have peace where they didn't accept them before 1967?
Because it's not about land. And the Auschwitz borders, as Abba Eban called them, first of all, these were never borders. The armistice lines, that's really what we're talking about. It's clearly made absolutely clear in the resolution that Israel was to have defensible borders. That was what the borders were supposed to be. That was to be negotiated. Well, here we are, 63 years later, and we're still negotiating. And their idea of negotiating is killing Jews. I mean, there was a Scottish counselor yesterday who was defending the jihadi murders of the Fogel family. Now you've entered the...
Defending the murder of the Fogel family?
Yes, a Scottish politician. The point I'm trying to make in this is that these are savages, and these publicity agents are urbane savages. I see them in exactly the same way. Ayn Rand, who said, evil is made possible by the sanction that you give it. Withdraw your sanction. And the world has withdrawn from the good. It's the hatred of the good for being the good. This is what we're witnessing. And people that say the truth clearly are demonized, marginalized, discredited. The argument is never addressed. The content of what I say is never addressed.
Some people accuse you of being an anti-Muslim. What in fact is the truth?
There's no such thing. I love people. It's why I do what I do. I'm counter-jihad. I am counter-jihad, but I don't hate people. I hate the ideology that inspires jihad. I do. And any normal, rational person would say the same thing.
Some people say that they are extremist Jews who attack Arabs and so forth, and that they're extremists on both sides. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a complete moral equivocation and a lie. You show me. You show me. I will show you every day the slaughter of Christians in Indonesia, the burning of their churches and cathedrals. I will show you the slaughter of Christians in Ethiopia and in the Philippines and in Indonesia, and the Coptic Christians in Egypt, and the Jews in Israel. And I mean, look, you're looking at a region of the world, the Middle East, that was once Christian, and with the exception of the tiny Jewish state, is completely Islamic. And these are brutal regimes living under the Sharia, an oppressive, brutal, misogynistic, gender apartheid, clitorectomies, forced marriages, women are not worth the same as men. We're witnessing in the West the continuing dehumanization of women and diminishment by the hand of our own political elites. I mean, we have a situation here in Florida. I came down on Friday to protest an honor killing that was classified as an accidental suicide. The medical examiner actually had the audacity to sign. The woman supposedly banged her head on a coffee table. It's not even possible. It's not even possible to bang your head on a coffee table and kill yourself that way. But because there's a large Muslim community there, and because the Rifka Bari trial was happening at the same time, and Rifka Bari was a Christian convert out of Islam who was threatened by her father that he would kill her when he found out that she had converted. And how did they find out, her parents? The mosque was spying on her. So she ran to Florida, and it became very big headlines down here. I was down here, I was covering that trial. And it wasn't a week later that this girl was murdered. If she died by banging her head against a coffee table, then why does she have these bruises on her arm where obviously she's being restrained? So what's the message there? If you're Muslim, you can get away with murder?
Well, we live in a very strange time in history where well-connected individuals get away with crimes like the one in Miami Beach, where a wealthy young man killed 2 British businessmen and bought his way out of a vehicular homicide situation. Pam, tell us about your latest book.
My next book is coming out September the 6th. It's called Stop the Islamization of America, A Practical Guide to the Resistance. And what it is a must-have practical primer for patriots, how to stop the mosquing of your neighborhood, where they establish, rabats in the middle of a quiet residential street where there are no churches, no businesses, no synagogues, and no Muslims. And they change the entire dynamic of the neighborhood in 5 years. The mosquing of the public school, the mosquing of the workplace where they institute Muslim prayer times, let's say on union contracts, the fighting of Sharia finance, Islamic finance, where, in order to invest in Islamic finance, it has to be halal. So they can't invest in alcohol, they can't invest in tobacco, they can't invest in pork, can't invest in some forms of adult entertainment, but these are whole American sectors. Do we want our taxpayer dollars being used to bankrupt whole American sectors? So the book is a practical guide for the everyday person who sees something happening in their community and they don't know how to fight it, they don't know what to do, and I think it's a very important book that most Americans who are become increasingly aware of what's happening just because they're seeing it in the daily social fabric of their lives. So it's completely different than my last book, The Post-American Presidency, the Obama administration's War on America. That was a warning. I had spent years researching him and his nefarious connections and warned of the relinquishing of American sovereignty, that he was an internationalist, that he had very anti-Semitic allegiances, alliances, gurus, and that was a must-read book if you wanted to understand what was happening in America and who was in the White House and what shaped him and what shaped his worldview.
Pam, this is very interesting. Unfortunately, we have to end our conversation because you're about to rush on stage and deliver a lecture. It's been a real pleasure having you, and I wish you a lot of success.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. I'll be right back.
We are seeing an increasing hostile and evil force, both in Europe and clearly in the Middle East, and now America.
Sir, these are frozen waffles.
Yes.
And I don't think I've ever had a frozen waffle. Have you ever had one?
I have.
Are they tasty?
Sure they are.
Butter and syrup?
You can put syrup on them. Yeah, a little powdered sugar sometimes.
Powdered sugar?
Yeah. Yeah, they're nice. What's that?
I don't know. It's a thing.
Oh, my goodness, it's a slingshot. Oh, my. Well.
Wow. Where'd that go?
Just right in front of the desk, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Be careful. I don't want to hurt anybody.
Well,
You see that thing? It went with the speed of light and traveled about 1.5 feet. Let's try for up there. They used something very similar to this in the Civil War. Were you aware of that? Oh! All right. Okay.
right up there.
Caught the woman off guard up there.
I
I think I might have fractured her cheekbone.
Well, look at the frozen. Are they frozen?
I'm begging you, no lawsuits.
Yeah.
All right, we'll try one
They
more,
are frozen.
and then we'll put it away. Try one.
Certainly hope so.
I'm going to try one more.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So, we know we have that.
At the very least.
If nothing else happens tonight, we go back to the waffle.
I understand.
Because that seemed to be a huge hit.
Yeah. Hey.
Well, I know where I am. The problem is that people don't like it. And clearly, I love that your show is named Peace. It's what I'm fighting for. But with many people, peace cannot be negotiated because this is not their objective.
Itself from hostile invasions and terror. Israel is a small state surrounded by Arab countries 650 times its size, some of which are large bases of global terror. Only 44 miles separate between the Jordan Valley and the Mediterranean Sea. After the Six-Day War in 1967, when Israel was attacked by 4 armies on 3 fronts, United Nations Security Council Resolution 242 stated that Israel was entitled to new defensible borders to replace the previous fragile lines from which it was attacked. What are Israel's defensible borders? What are its essential security needs? The Jordan Rift Valley, Israel's eastern frontier, forms a natural barrier between Israel and the countries of Jordan, Iraq, and Iran. The Jordan Valley rises from an area that is 1,200 feet below sea level to a hilly ridge of up to 3,000 feet, creating a steep 4,200-foot virtual wall opposite any force attacking from the east. The growing threat of global jihad activity near Israel's borders requires it to prevent infiltrations of terrorists and weapons. When Israel left the Philadelphia corridor in Gaza, it became a highway for the infiltration of terrorists and the flow of hundreds of tons of ammunition and weaponry from all over the Arab world, aimed at Israeli civilians. The Jordan Valley is the equivalent of Gaza's Philadelphia corridor in the West Bank. To defend itself, Israel must retain control over the Jordan Valley. This is Israel's mountain ridge, rising up to 3,000 feet. It dominates Israel's major coastal cities, where more than 70% of its population, 80% of its industry, and all of its airfields and seaports are located. Missiles launched from the Judean hills pose an immediate threat to Jerusalem, Israel's capital. Israel's only international airport, Ben Gurion, would be in the range of even primitive rockets, while all planes taking off and landing would be threatened by shoulder-launched anti-aircraft missiles. More advanced weaponry would be able to hit virtually any point in Israel. If Israel were forced back to the 1949 armistice lines, the Green Line, the country's width would be reduced to a narrow 9-mile waistline that would be impossible to defend. That's why any future arrangement must include Israeli control over key areas of the mountain ridge and a demilitarized Palestinian state. Israel's narrow borders means a combat aircraft can cross the entire country in under 4 minutes. In less than 2 minutes, an enemy plane could penetrate the country's airspace via the Jordan Valley and reach Jerusalem. In order to thwart an aerial attack on Jerusalem, a hostile plane must be shot down at least 10 miles east of the capital to prevent it from crashing into major population centers. Therefore, Israel must be able to identify hostile planes before they cross the Jordan River line and intercept them shortly after. To defend itself, Israel must control the airspace over the West Bank. Israel's transportation arteries, and in particular the Trans-Israel Highway, enable travel and connection between Israel's regions. They also assure the mobility of the Israel Defense Forces in case of attack. Protection of these vital arteries is essential in order to ensure that 1. Civilians aren't victims of terrorist gunfire. 2. Regions of the country cannot easily be cut off. 3. The mobility of Israel's defense forces is not hindered in the case of invasion. To defend itself, Israel must control its main arteries of transportation. There is enormous uncertainty about future trends in the Middle East. Iran is determined to become the supreme power as the U.S. withdraws from Iraq. No one can guarantee the future of many of the current regimes in the region. Today, more than ever, it is crucial to ensure defensible borders for Israel.
We are seeing an increasing hostile and evil force, both in Europe and clearly in the Middle East, and now America. Well, I know where I am. The problem is that people don't like it. And clearly, I love that your show is named Peace. It's what I'm fighting for. But with many people, peace cannot be negotiated because this is not their objective.